feel like I'm getting hammered.
Caitlin Clark has encountered many difficulties on court, but there hasn't been anything more annoying to fans than the inconsistent and just dubious officiating, a clear lack of calls to superfluous technicalities. It's beginning to believe that the referees are personally, is this only a difficult competition, vendetta? Or is there a more profound factor at work here? There is electric energy throughout the arena. Every moment Clark sets foot on the ground, supporters are standing there waiting for her signature stunning assists and deep threes. But rather than being able to concentrate on her game, that Clark must continuously review not only for defenders, but also for her shoulder in anticipation of the referees blowing the whistle during the most dubious situations. Once, the audience would frequently roar in support, finds itself opposing the officials, criticizing choices that make completely nonsensical.
Indiana leads by 11 with 5:48 remaining in the second.
So, what's actually taking place? Are these simply poor decisions or a practice of prejudice? We're dissecting 10 of the emerging most egregious calls that change the game, had players, fans, and experts, their brains. And believe me when I say you won't believe it when we reach number 7. Let's begin with how obvious this has become. With among the most absurd no-calls, it was September 22nd in recent memory. The Indiana Fever's playoff debut tensions against the Connecticut Sun were high, and Caitlin Clark was the center of attention. The most exciting rookie in the league, the scene was prepared for an exciting showdown. However, instead of that, fans received to one of the most heinous performance seasonal blunders within minutes of the game. Carrington sprang for the ball but ultimately struck Clark, the force of the square in the eye. Clark was momentarily stunned by the impact, blinking in an attempt to recover her pay attention while the audience awaited the whistle. And kept waiting, but it never arrived.
Clark, harassed by Carrington, finds Boston. Clark gets hit in the face by Carrington and is down.
The fans burst out in indignation, anticipating a foul call at the very least, if not an outright violation. The referees silenced the play, went on as though nothing had happened. Occurred in the meanwhile, and Clark was obviously impacted by the hit, found it difficult to locate. She completed the first half with her rhythm, taking a shot that is unusual for Z for 6 and 9 from the field. A severe bruise from beyond the arc began to grow around her eye. Tangible reminder of another squandered opportunity. Make a call.
As everyone else is seeing this angle, I'm calling her in, and I'm saying to her, I need answers.
This was only the first of numerous instances that had folks wondering just what were officials doing? Was this merely one another instance of difficult playoff basketball? In any case, was it something more? The message was clear. Clark would not receive any calls from superstars. If anything was going to be the one who received it. Among the worst non-calls are the league has to provide.
Clark trying to get around Mabry. Clark to the rim, reverses it home through the contact.
The fans burst out in anger, using social media to make demands League One's responsibility. It was deemed the worst by an irate viewer. Officiated the most memorable basketball game, one person criticized the refereeing as an absolute shame. But in spite of the growing annoyance among onlookers, what Caitlin Clark does best is what she did. Maintained her concentration and went on. The unfair officiating and the fighting didn't end there during the match. Clark had to put up with constant physicality. Held, pushed, and struck repeatedly. But the whistle didn't make any noise, no calls. She only expects protection. To experience everything, have a peek at this point, Marina was acting aggressively. Defended Clark during her initial postseason bucket.
Another look here at the heavy contact.
Even the game's commentators were unable to overlook the excessive communication, drawing attention to the obvious infractions. Yet the officials entirely, Clark was uninterested. But he didn't allow the missed calls characterize her. She discovered other methods to help, demonstrating once more why she is among the most formidable rivals in the league. But it was more than simply one game, served as a stark illustration of how officiating can influence results and more. Crucially endanger players at that time came another startling moment. Physicality that caused fans to wonder the lines separating aggressive defensive and blatantly risky play. This at the time. It was a game against the August Sun in Connecticut. Everything appeared normal on the 28th until Alyssa Thomas trampled over Clark, checking the shoulder that sent the youngster fell to the ground.
Therefore, Alyssa Thomas.
Yeah, they're not going to look at this.
That's
thought they might.
Gotten the fans here fired up.
The arena let out a gasp in shock at the impact. It was harsh, yet in some way the officials' fans were simply given a common foul assessment. I'm furious because one person isn't playing basketball. One person stated that it was a cheap shot with the shoulder leaned in, the overpowering agreement that was a blatant infraction, and not referring to it as such only raised questions over the officiating in the WNBA. Despite having to endure relentless, Caitlin Clark's physicality prevented her confidence was shaken, and she brushed it off. The victim stood back up and left immediately to work on her capacity to recover. Returning and remaining focused on the game was evidence of her mental resilience in the face of Clark's punches kept having an effect, demonstrating why she is among the most resolute league athletes. But only when Clark seems to have conquered every difficulty presented to her in a novel way this time. Debate arose from an "imagine this as a timeout," unexpected source, an enthusiastic rookie gathering her supporters, and then, suddenly, a veteran stepped. How would the shover force their way in? Referees respond to the matchup by on August 18th. The Seattle Storm had already been a fierce conflict with a game. Max Clark was close to the climax. Seattle bench energizing the audience, consuming the electrified atmosphere, and Skylar Diane Smith abruptly made her move unexpectedly. Diane Smith stepped back of Clark and gave him a shoulder check, firmly shoving her from. The manner in which the arena's initial excitement swiftly transformed into astonished gasps, then a surge of irate alcohol. However, the referees allowed it to happen again. Slide, no warning, no foul, just silence. This incident immediately sparked a discussion about fairness and sportsmanship. Fans swarmed social media with requests for clarification. One person asked another, "How is this not a foul?" Wondered why some players appear to get away with open hostility, while Clark remained under investigation for the smallest acts.
Okay, by now I'm sure you've seen Skylar Diggins assault Caitlin Clark after Indiana blew out Seattle.
However, although Diane Smith's push was entirely ignored by authorities, Clark's own demonstrations of on the court, passion and emotion have encountered rapid technicals and cautions, so the question still stands. This is just one more illustration of inconsistent performance by the officials, or is there a fundamental problem at work in the WNBA's August 18th matchup against the Seattle Storm had already intense, but what transpired next revealed the heat much greater, as 714 people are still in. Caitlin Clark missed an opportunity in the third quarter shot, and during a frustrated time lightly strike the cushioning of the hoop for a basketball before even examine what transpired with the referees. The whistle blew, a technical foul.
And Caitlin Clark gets hit with a technical. After
shock was sent by the call. Waves that went through the arena. Supporters were instantly split. Was this truly in behavior that is not sportsmanlike, or just a gamer responding to a challenging? As the argument continued, Clark subsequently described her response, but the damage had already been done.
But I think he fired me up to continue to play a lot harder. I thought we got a lot better after he did that, so I want to thank him for that.
Despite the dubious, Clark didn't let the call frighten her. Remained steadfast in his resolve to guide her squad to triumph, but others may have. She answered, allowing her frustration to fester. Desired the only method. She is aware of allowing her game to speak for herself.
Had nothing to do with my team, had nothing to do with their reffing, had nothing to do with other team. It was just because I'm a competitor.
Clark didn't simply ignoring the shove. She dominated and moved on. From Din Smith, dismissing the she maintained her vigor despite the technical foul, and maintained laser-like focus. The outcome being a decisive victory for the Fever by 17 points, with Clark achieving a remarkable 23 points.
Michaela on your wedding in that group.
Kennedy Carter nearly picks off the pass, and Diana Taurasi, they'll count the bucket. And one coming up for DT.
However, here's the point at which things become truly fascinating. Is this kind of response on a regular basis? Is Clark being singled out or penalized? Let's examine referees in more detail. Had dealt with comparable circumstances for other league participants include these fair application of the rules. Or is there a blatant double standard in place?
Clark, the hesitation, working inside the reverse. Oh, and took a big hit there on Jackie Young.
Technical fouls were merely the beginning. Given that the Indiana Fever faced the Las Vegas Aces in a moment collision would cause indignation and increase an eerie query, how far is too far regarding physical play in the Gainbridge, September 11th, WNBA Fieldhouse. The arena's energy was electric until Jackie appeared out of nowhere. Young touched Caitlin with his hand. The rookie was shocked by Clark's expression, staggered back, temporarily shook.
And the foul does come, and for the second time here in the last minute, we have seen a heavy collision.
The assembly as a whole held it as waiting for the common call. Bad. The response was immediately poured with alcohol from the stands for skepticism propagated via social fans, and the media were left wondering. There are recent observations, but Clark, as usual, she refused to think about it, brushed it off, and resumed playing the game. However, a glaring moment hung in the air. Illustration illustrates the distinction between tough Clark's defense and careless play, unquestionably resilient, but it was unclear how much more of this there would be. Was she expected to continue till May 22nd, 2020, for the Indiana Fever were placed in a hard fight against the Seattle Storm as the first half came to an end? Tensions were constantly racing. High Caitlin Clark aggressively sped toward the basket, was contacted again, and no whistle for the third time.
Seconds left. Goes around to Gumake. Drives baseline. And shot rejected by Izzy McMagor. And all of a sudden, we're pretty close. This has been as close as it's been.
The audience completely imprisoned and exploded, not in joy, but in utter shock that wasn't a head coach. There was a foul on the sidelines. The Christie sides had witnessed her enough. Her annoyance boiled over as she expressed following the game, we need to improve the officiating. She said, get some of those calls weren't merely annoyance. They were a straightforward appeal for consistency and fairness for the deference that Clark was due on the court. But the more pressing query was this another missed call? Clark's officiating style differs from as the season progressed. Everyone else that the question got increasingly difficult to disregard when one dispute fades into another, replaces it, and starts to form a pattern. With Caitlin Clark at its core, breathtaking scenes, but not for the reasons why it's not what you expected this time regarding her performances that broke records or shots that changed the game. It's about the calls or none at all. Washington Mystics versus June 19th. Attention in the arena during the Indiana Fever. High Clark raises the stakes for her shift as the defender gets closer, and then it occurs. Stephanie Dolson takes over and decides the ball is swatted away upon contact. Everyone in the crowd holds their breath, awaiting the impending whistle, but it never appears.
To Clark. Clark turns on the Jets. Clark to the rim and blocked. Oh, Dolson got back. Clark thought there was a foul.
Misunderstanding spreads like wildfire. Social media erupts in indignation with incredulity. That's such a blatant violation. It's one thing to let this be disregarded. Flow in the game, yet this felt distinct.
Well, Clark got a pretty good case.
Some claim it's simply a natural aspect of being as a rookie. Clark is just undergoing the customary welcome to the league treatment. But some people observe something more worrisome. A pattern of obvious lack of calls that appear to follow. According to one fan, Clark, every game a no call is an elbow to the face, but Clark gets a technical hit to the post. Now, inconsistencies are beginning to accumulate. Let us go back to one of Clark's first WNBA moments, like as a match that established setting the tone for everything that came after. May Indiana Fever versus New York 18th Liberty. Clark continues to adjust to the pro level, follows her around the court. Signature assurance, however, Breanna Stewart suddenly sets a screen so forceful that shockwaves are produced. The impact is felt through the crowd. The collision is undeniably evident. Yet again, there was no word from the official. Clark falters, clearly shaken. As admirers observe in incredulity, if this isn't a foul, arguments abound on social media. And contentious discussions, screens are a part of basketball, but when does it stop? Does a powerful pick get too much? contact, and more crucially, why I think Clark isn't receiving the same amount of the more calls it receives. The more it occurs, the more difficult it is to ignore this has nothing to do with bad luck or being tough. Defense, constancy is key, or in the question in Clark's case, is its absence. This rugged rookie is all that's left. Treatment, or is the league purposefully ignoring the situation when it comes to Caitlin CLK? Caitlin Clark's psychological state strength has been repeatedly evaluated. Once again, but nothing could get her ready for what should have happened on May 20th? Have evolved from a commonplace play into a moment that both fans and analysts found compelling, wondering whether WNBA officiating was letting her lose the match against the Connecticut Sun began similarly to other. However, things took a bad turn, and Clark was maneuvering across the screen while a catastrophe struck, and she rolled her ankle. Clumsily, and she was on in a flash. The floor, squirming in agony, the arena held its breath.
That they can stop Caitlin and that they're the better team.
Oh, Caitlin goes down.
Undoubtedly, this called for a whistle. Undoubtedly, the authorities would intervene. But silence, once more no stoppage, no foul. According to the refs, Clark was only holding her ankle. While her fans watched the game, was unable to comprehend what they were seeing, the explosion of social media, if a rough screen that causes the ankle to roll wasn't sufficient to get a call. So what the inquiry wasn't limited to. To be fair, player safety was the main concern, but being Clark, she didn't let it deter her. Despite her obvious agony, she persisted. Refused to be removed by the injury of the game at this awful moment, since it demonstrated just what makes her unique in both her skill and her perseverance. Clark isn't merely performing for attention. She is playing the reels to win regardless of the barriers.
Now, what little girl wants to grow up and play in a league where you're targeted like that? How do you sit here and profess and demand that everyone take women's sports seriously when you can't even take it seriously enough to not act like a junior high queen on the court? It's stupid. That's so dumb. It looks like a soap opera. 10 jaw-dropping calls that are controversial situations ranging from harsh physical examinations to Caitlin Clark's flagrant non-calls endured everything. But each obstacle she demonstrated why she is the next big thing. These weren't just poor decisions, WNBA, were incidents that provoked anger, sparked discussions, and compelled fans to doubt the WNBA's integrity officiating. But the true lesson is this: Clark's fortitude never faltered. Regardless of the number of hits she received, how many times did the whistle remain silent? Unjust the way she was treated, but she adjusted. She managed to succeed even while the referees and odds appeared to be stacked. In opposition to now, what does this actually mean for her? Indicate for the future of how does the WNBA maintain equity play while keeping the tempo high? That's what makes basketball so thrilling. In the calls we've observed, the hits that we've seen Clark endure anything, but it's your turn to weigh. Is the WNBA not doing enough to safeguard its largest celebrity? Or is this only a component of the Choose a Game name? And let us know in the remarks, such as subscribe and turn on all alerts to ensure you don't miss anything. Select the video that appears on the screen, and we'll see you at the following one.